Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. So thank you for joining. And what I'd like to do is let's just start with a settling meditation right now. Very simple, hanging out with the breath as we've been doing, as we know how to do quite well, okay? Really simple. We've done a few ones. Again, you can set yourself up with your posture and making sure that you're in a comfortable position, as comfortable as possible. What you might want to do is have your spine as extended as possible. But mainly you want to make sure the body is comfortable. If you're seated in a chair without your legs crossed, have your feet straight down and feel again the support, the buoyancy of like roots through yourself from the earth. And wherever you are in your building, wherever you are in your house, on the floor, it doesn't matter, but slowly, lightly close your eyes. And as you're settling your body into a comfortable position, feel the roots as a support for you, as a support for your practice. As you allow a normal, natural breath to move through your system. And right now, with another breath, let your whole upper body move with each breath. Don't worry if your mind wanders. Just feel your body right now alive and breathing with each breath. From this place, consider your motivation, your purpose for being here right now. The effect self-compassion and a true self-compassionate practice can have on your mind. If that can help you orient your mind in a more peaceful, happier direction, fantastic. And think about beyond our own boundaries, to the boundaries of ourselves, how positive, how helpful that could be on the planet and with everybody you touch, everyone you interact with. So please relax right now and slowly open your eyes. So it's been quite a week, quite sad actually in many ways, of the violence that's erupted in our cities, in our communities. And it's a shame because the states are really being challenged, right? We've had a pandemic, we're dealing with health issues, and then it seems like right now we're dealing with, I consider racism another public health issue, frankly, certainly for certain communities. So we've got this on top, and then today in my area it was election day, which is another crazy thing because people were concerned about having to go to this place and be with other people to vote, and the voting by mail is starting. So it's been a challenging time. So I think even more effective and more helpful to do this kind of work that we're doing when you become off balance. And so and we are going to do the treating yourself like a friend in a moment. I just want to repeat that meditation because I find it really powerful like that. Okay, I'm just going to hop into some of my notes here. So I want to talk about, we've been talking about some of these, but part of self-compassion, this session and the last session, the next session we have, I mean, this could go on for many more sessions because there's a lot of information I'd like to talk about, but we're going to do the best we can, is stages to acceptance. How do I move myself into a place of acceptance and well-being, which is a byproduct of the acceptance? So I want to talk about a few things, just introduce some thoughts on what normally happens is, and I've been talking a lot about why we don't feel self-compassionate, is because of resistance. It's as simple as that. We're resisting something. And I noticed this past week, I discussed with some friends of mine, and I'm sure many of you did, Buddhist responses to the particular situations going on right now with George Floyd. And so what people come up to is, as a Buddhist nun, and I don't know how many of you, I'd be curious, if you consider yourself a Buddhist, not all of you do, totally fine. But did you come across the thought in your mind, and I'm just layering this into reality right now because that's kind of how I teach, that it's not okay to be angry if you're a Buddhist? Did anybody come across that thought in their mind or experience something like that? Can't see all of you, but you could put your hand up, or is that resonating with anybody? Okay. You know, and it comes through me sometimes as a Buddhist nun. I'm not supposed to be angry, okay? But I was talking with some other people how the anger fuels something. So can I use the anger to fuel something positive? I think as a more beneficial response is, I'm not going to repress the anger and say that I'm not angry, because I am angry, okay? But how am I going to use the anger then? And so rather than having me ruminate on what's making me angry, and I've actually had issues where if I'm looking at a little bit of the news on my computer or something, it's been really hard for me to see the scene played over and over of George Floyd under the officer, the police guy's knee, which they've been playing obviously over and over because it's very effective, like for people to get the message, which I think is important. But in my mind, when I go away from that, I don't want to ruminate over into the blame and the anger and that horrible white person and whatever your mind says about it, right? And you could actually layer that onto other people in the news that you don't like, let's say. And then you leave the scene, but you're ruminating. So the rumination holds me anchored in the anger, where if I can discuss it with friends and we can constructively, like what happens is I'm part of 2 interfaith groups. So what we decided to do is we draft statements, but we're also having meetings. And now one of our groups is planning a course of action so that we can get engaged. And then there'll be a vigil on Saturday in one of our kind of the county capital where I live. And there's going to be a vigil, and there's going to be a number of people there. And we're also very, very cognizant of being careful about people that may want to instigate violence there. So we're taking precautions, but it's somehow I felt like I can channel my anger and the disturbance to my mind there, which doesn't leave the anger hanging out there. So, but as a Buddhist nun and things, I don't want to get into the, oh, I shouldn't feel this and I shouldn't feel that. So what happens first is you have this aversion that pops up, okay? And part of that is resistance, avoidance, and rumination. And just get real with your mind. Notice how your negative emotions get fueled, okay? Number 2 for me, and I've mentioned this word before, and these are my steps to moving into self-compassion. These are my steps to healing. And like I said, acceptance and well-being. So number 2 is curiosity. And I mentioned that is I notice when a negative emotion arises in my mind now, more and more. And I used to get down on myself, and I used to have, oh, I shouldn't think that. Like Buddhist nuns don't think that, or a Buddhist shouldn't think that. Okay. But now I'm kind of curious, like, what's that about for you? If I have fear come up, what's that about? If I have vulnerability come up, what's going on? If I have anger come up, what are the circumstances around me suddenly? Like what changed? What dynamic shifted? Who's in the scene right now that I might be bouncing off of? And what is happening? And the curiosity is turning toward the discomfort, okay, with interest. Okay. So a key part there, turning towards that discomfort, which we mentioned. Sorry, I was trying to pin my video but it changed now, just because some people don't like, if it's being recorded, to have all their pictures up. I don't know, Heidi, did you change something? Anyway, it's okay, doesn't matter. So what's interesting is with interest, so again, this was all about turning towards our pain and suffering to get into the self-compassion. We have to look at that, but we're also staying there with it and observing, okay? And again, with these things of, as I mentioned, mindfulness, these components, mindfulness, and using shared humanity, that we all go through these situations, and loving kindness, okay, which we're moving into. We're going to talk more about those right now. We've talked a lot about mindfulness. So step number 2 is curiosity. Turning toward the discomfort. I like noticing I am uncomfortable. I have had anger in my mind this week. And now, okay, let me look at that. What's going on there? But with interest. Okay, not with fear and not with, I'm not really interested what's happening, with interest. Number 3, this is a great word, tolerance. Tolerance, okay? And I'll explain that as safely enduring. Safely enduring. Okay, so now I'm looking at the anger and I'm kind of thinking, okay, I'm just going to hang out, observe this right now. It's okay that I'm feeling this because it just happens. Okay, and I'm even bringing in the shared humanity. A lot of people feel this way. I'm not alone in this. With my mindfulness, I'm just observing it. With my loving kindness, we're going to have more expressions of how do we deal with it with the loving kindness. But part of it is doing these exercises. Number 4, there's 5 steps. Number 4, Again, stages to acceptance and well-being. Number 4, a great word, allowing. Allowing is letting feelings come and go. I'm not angry every moment of the day, but I might be angry if I see a certain news story, something, anger at why people had to destroy other people's businesses, that they felt that that was a response, but with some understanding, but just allowing, like sometimes the anger's there, sometimes the fear's there, sometimes I'm tired of it all, sometimes I'm just balanced and fine and working, doing my stuff to kind of build my resilience in this space, like that. Number 5, friendship. I would even say embracing, holding on, wrapping around the whole, like seeing some hidden value in it that I find value in, So it's something to think about, those 5 steps at times. And there's lots of different exercises I'm weaving through these 4 sessions. So if you can't be present sometimes with your mindfulness with difficult moments, okay, chances are you won't be present with the best moments of your life either. So this is, again, turning in to sometimes the suffering. Why? Because it will be there. It will be there, but the more cognizant and mindful I am of that, helps me appreciate smelling a delicious flower and being present there when that's happening. This is about all of life, embracing all of it, okay? What is you can develop a process of establishing a new relationship with our thoughts and feelings rather than directly challenging or resisting them. So when it comes up, it's like this week, anger was suddenly there. It wasn't really there last week, okay? But this man got killed, yet another Black person, another person of color, and somehow this week I just really let the anger go. I really was like, I'm angry now. I'm done. Enough of this. I really felt like it's enough now. What more do we, what more does our society have to deal with? What more do African Americans have to deal with anymore? It's unbelievable. So instead of resisting it, I just kind of am watching it and going, wow, this is such a strong thing. I can see where the burning of the buildings comes in because I look at my own anger. I'm not going to burn down a building. That's not going to be I'm not going to harm anybody. I certainly hope not. I can't imagine, but I can understand more. I can understand more because I have it in my own mind. And I'm not resisting and denying it and saying it doesn't exist. I'm a human being. We have a shared humanity. Okay. So acceptance refers to a conscious choice to experience our sensations, our feelings, our thoughts, just as they are, moment to moment. I'm just being there with it. I'm just experiencing what's coming up. Not changing it. I don't need to fix it either right now. I'm just observing it and being with it. So compassion is not only relevant to blameless victims, okay, but also to those whose suffering stems from failures, personal weakness, or bad decisions. Okay, so this also extends to, I know this is hard for some people, a particular leader we have right now in our country. And several people have asked me this week, how do you deal with this person? Or how do you deal with a leader that you really, really disagree with? And it comes from that place of there's people that we all make mistakes. Have made terrible mistakes. So sometimes it's out there and sometimes somebody ends up in a position and, so it's a grander position that more people are exposed to. So obviously it's going to affect more people. So when a mistake happens, it could be seen as a bigger mistake. But how can I not have compassion for that? Right? And I learned through that to be with and allow and even find the curiosity with my own mistakes. So it gives me more space of heart, more space of mind to then be able to reach out to these others that make horrible mistakes that affect a lot more people. I mean, one example I can give, and Heidi can certainly identify with this, and those of you that have been in positions of management, or so I remember, so Larry's with us, and he was a manager at Land of Medicine Boot, I believe. Is that right, Larry? Yep. So Larry worked with me at Vajrapani. Heidi's now the director of Vajrapani. And I was the director there. And I initially didn't really want to be the director there. And I was catapulted into this director position when I had just been a retreater who used to go there once in a while. Like the rest of you show up, you visit a center, it's so beautiful, and you walk through the redwoods and you go, isn't this great? Then I became kind of the boss. And everything shifted, the way people looked at me, the way people treated me, this power. They were giving me all this power. So if I made a decision, it was the wrong decision because I was learning how to be a director. I didn't really have any lessons on that, any instruction, other than, the community and what they would tell me about things. But when I'd make a mistake, it affected more people than when I was just a retreater that would show up and maybe say the wrong thing. So think about somebody on a grander scale and that position that they're in and how all the eyes are on you. And all you have to say is one word and everybody is attacking you from this side, attacking you from that side, and like that. And so sometimes wouldn't you, when you're attacked that much, wouldn't you start, if you didn't have any exercise and practice for your mind, wouldn't you start reverting into attacking back at other people? A lot of people respond that way. So if you want to take our president, he's not that unusual, not that outrageous than the rest of us and the rest of the world. It's as much as burning a building down like that. It's not really all that different than some people might feel. So there are ways that we start to expand the heart-mind experience when we feel stuck. So these are just some things to think about. So what I'd like to do is I want to go back to, just briefly, the exercise, how you would treat a friend. Again, we are building our self-compassion. This is one way to really start working with yourself with this. Okay, so I'd like you to just, again, please relax. Find that comfortable position. Lightly close your eyes and just allow that gaze to turn inward for a moment. Just feel your breath. And just think about a time when a very close friend came to you to tell you that they're struggling with something. They feel really bad about something, about themselves, and they're struggling. And just put yourself in that situation for a moment. Just imagine. Notice how you respond in this situation. You are at your best right now. What do you say, and how are you acting right now in relation to this friend? Notice your tone of voice, and notice any particular physical activities you might feel to do. And just pause that scene. You can let that scene go for a moment. Think about when you're struggling and feeling really down and really bad about yourself. What do you say to yourself? What are your activities? How do you treat yourself in this period? And just notice your tone, any physical responses like that. So if you notice a difference, okay, just explore curiosity. Why is there a difference? What factors or fears come into play that may have led you to treat yourself and others so differently? Just explore that with curiosity. What about folding in some tolerance of just safely enduring that sometimes we're not practiced at treating ourselves better? What if you fold that in as you're just observing? And what if you allow these feelings to come and go? That sometimes I bash myself. Somehow I'm not treating myself as well as I'm treating others. I don't have that self-compassion developed yet, that muscle. You're just allowing that. So I'd like you to imagine now, in our embracing and making friends with ourselves, you're seated in your home on the couch, wherever is comfortable in your home. And imagine there's two of you seated beside each other or seated across from each other. Identical copy of yourself. And one of you is telling the other one how they're struggling and how bad they feel about themselves. Both of them are you. So here now, the second one is this close friend. It's yourself. Making friends with yourself. Imagine this is your really, really good friend. They're telling you they're struggling. Practice now how you want to respond. What sort of tone are you using? If you like the tone, it's working, continue. If you're finding it's not really the tone that you wanted, feel free to adjust your tone. This is your time to practice and make a new habit. Are there any physical gestures you'd like to make? Again, moving into the friendship, embracing maybe. But there's many ways we can embrace. A simple touch, a hug, giving somebody a flower, a piece of chocolate, listening well. So slowly finish up the exercise. Any last remnant you'd like to say to the aspect of yourself that needs help? Any final gesture? And slowly let that copy of yourself dissolve back into the space from which they came. And please relax, and slowly, when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Any comments, if anyone wants to unmute for a moment or raise your hand? Any comments on the exercise?
Real quick, are people able to unmute themselves?
Okay. And let me just read, sorry, before we start, one comment. We can all see, it's hard for me, I don't believe it. Anybody except person in the mirror. Right, okay, yeah, there are peaceful protesters, there's looters and thugs, yeah. Thank you, Victoria, Vicky. Other comments on the exercise and meditation? Thank you, Faye. She said it worked for her. And what I'm asking is also, number one, did you notice you're still treating, some of you, very different how I'm treating myself than my struggling friend? And number two, from the practice of working with yourself, okay, this is practice, meaning we have to try something, and practice is you have to do it again and again and again and again. If you notice that you still have an extremely harsh, critical voice with yourself and your problems. If it's not a problem for you, no problem. But for a lot of people, they said, wow, it was really different the way I was talking to myself, the tone I had. And if that's one of your issues, this could be a practice that's really helpful for you to do. So Patty, you drew a blank on what you would say to yourself. So there's some exercise for you. But again, you could practice with What did you say to your friend? You have words there for your friend, right? Why can't you use the same words for yourself if they're calming, compassionate, gentle words from my friend? You already have used those with your friends. You've already habituated and you've got that. So I would be curious about, I wonder what prevents me from saying that stuff to myself. Okay, some of it comes from our genetic makeup, our family conditions, our cultural conditions. And then some of it is our own rumination in the mind, those habits of the negative thinking. So we're going to talk about other ways to stop the negative thinking slowly and then in these next 2 sessions. So, but that's something, Patty, I would have a look there. It's fantastic. And the fact that you've actually said you were able to say comforting words to your friend.
Yes, I can say comforting words to my friends.
Great.
It depends on the person and the situation. You try and do it skillfully.
Right. But at least you have that going. Some people aren't really, there's some people very asocial. They don't know what to say at times. But you've already got that going. You do have experiences. So again, maybe sometimes superimpose your face, can do it in a visualization on your friend. Okay. This is something years ago, Nancy might remember this, Nancy Sanchez. Years ago when I was in California, because people drive in California all the time, we did a lot of driving meditation, didn't we? So you're about to give somebody the finger when you're driving because they cut in front of you. And what if you superimposed your mother on the face of that person in the other car? You'd never give the finger. Right? Sometimes we need to exercise like that. I'm going to superimpose and pretend it's a dear friend of mine to just get those juices flowing of some positive experiences. That's okay, like that. So the 2 me's, great. Yeah, it's nice to visualize yourself sitting next to you on the couch. Anytime you can do that meditation like that. Anytime you can try and do that meditation. Okay. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, when I visualize sitting with a friend, like oftentimes I'm just trying to get like my care to land with them, and that's kind of my focus. So I don't know, when I treat myself as if I'm sitting with a friend, I feel like there's some disconnection because it's not just, I don't know, there's like a wishing to take it away and knowing that you can't. You know what I mean?
When you're sitting with a friend.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's something. I wasn't going to put anybody on the spot, but somebody contacted me before the class, and we've been in touch. And she was saying, and I love this, where if a friend does come to you, this is just, I think, some general tact and kind of big-heartedness towards your friend and active listening. And she was saying, and I try to use this a lot too with people because I'm a fixer. So I've learned. So she said when she gets with a friend's dumping a whole problem on you and really needs help, somebody close, somebody you care for, why not check in with them? And you can kind of see, okay, do you want suggestions and advice right now and some help fixing it? Or do you just want me to listen? I think that's really compassionate too. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I don't know if that helps you with what you were saying.
Yeah, even I find myself usually I go into the listening role, but it's like really wanting to make sure my communication lands well and like is received well and does something.
Okay, so there's a section of something that falls into what we call the 8 worldly dharmas of, what are they thinking about me and I need to do this right. Self-compassion, that goes into self-esteem. Those are our self-esteem issues. How I'm going to rank. I need to be the one to fix it. I'm going to save them. I need to have the best response. Okay, that's okay. But that's all a whole self-esteem game. That gets into competitiveness. Self-compassion simply stays with, I'm really not sure how to respond. This might be going in my mind. A friend comes to you and I'll be thinking, wow, this is a lot. And I want to have the best response. I don't know what that is.
Mhm.
Not really sure what that is. And you know what? I'm just going to listen and do my best right now. Why? Because I care about them.
Mhm.
You know, and I care enough about myself, which is why I really care about them. Because really caring about myself goes beyond my boundaries. Is that's where I'm really getting into the crux of self-compassion. It's not just about myself, okay?
Mm.
But it really filters out there. So I'm just going to hang out with, this is a big problem they're having. I don't have all the answers. Why? Because of my shared humanity. Second component, shared humanity. Well, we're all in the same boat. Until you're a Buddha, you don't know what to say, do, or think in any given. You don't always know, but we try, we practice. Then one day we'll become perfect. So we're going to practice. So what I'm going to say, and you know what, I might say something that's really stupid and really, but I know it came from a good intention. So it's just staying there with that, with, well, this is scary. I'm afraid I'm going to muck up. And a lot of other people feel this way. And so I'm just going to try to be present with what they're saying. I'm going to listen well, mindfulness. Okay. And I'm going to try to take a deep breath, be kind to myself, loving kindness. There's the 3 components while my friend is pouring out and while I'm going to try to help them. And that's why sometimes I do like to interject too. If I'm noticing that fear circling my mind of, ooh, you know, I feel with this friend I'm treading on eggshells, or I have a friend who's very politically correct. Am I going to say the wrong thing and offend them? Or do I have the terminology right? You know, if I'm going through that, then I might, when they stop speaking, I might then say and venture into what this other person was saying. What I sometimes say is, oh, well, do you want some advice and suggestions? Or would you just like me to be a great sounding board for you? And then I'm even clear what they'd like from me, because maybe they want me to be a sounding board, but I'm trying to fix it and that's annoying them. And then we start getting nervous and we get off balance with each other. Maybe they want advice and want me to fix it and I'm just sitting quietly listening. And, you know, so that way it clarifies a little bit too, from I'm taking responsibility from my side to clarify what you really need right now. You know? And I've even said to friends that I'm very close with, I'll say, look, you want me to just shut up and listen? I'm totally happy to do that. Or do you want me to jump in and try to sort it with you? Or I've just, you know, thrown that out there for them. And then they're like, oh, no, can you just listen right now? And then I might want your advice later. Okay, then I know exactly, I'll try the best from here. And I might even say to a friend, you know, when they stop talking and say, what do you think I should do? And I'll say, you know, I'm not really sure, but I'm going to try here, but I might make some missteps. You know, I'm not sure I'm going to say exactly the things you want to hear, but I'm going to give it my best shot. Sometimes I've said that to people. Right? You just be honest with where you are. I don't know if that's helpful.
Yeah, that's helpful.
Slowly we're, let's see, Elizabeth, helps a lot to take better care of the self. This will also benefit others by extension, sure. Stronger, happier, more balanced self can only rub off in positive ways on others, absolutely. What's most likely to bring more joy to others through self-care, a muddy self or a sparkly self. So I'm not sure what you mean by the last statement, but
I mean, by muddy, I mean someone who is heavy with anger and irritation and frustration, or someone who is through giving to the self, you know, the care and enough rest and enough kindness, one is more buoyant. So that's what I mean by sparkly.
sure.
Sparkly by buoyant because one is happier, versus muddy through just being, you know, heavy with anger and frustration and disappointment. That's what I mean.
Sure.
I just, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. And sometimes I honestly would say, with self-compassion, with my own experience, my own exercises for myself, I sometimes strike a middle ground between the muddy and the sparkling. The thing is, it doesn't mean I'm not going for well-being. Absolutely I am, right? But I also find with my just being wherever I am, being with myself, that's good enough. Like I don't need to get to the perfection of I've done it all right and everything. It's kind of like, well, like sometimes I am hanging out with a friend and I'm thinking, I don't know what to tell them, you know, but I'm just going to be real about it. You know, I don't have all the answers and like that, but I'm not in the muddy part of the anger and you need to sort, you know, you need to tell them and get them and, you know, I'm not about revenge. Sometimes I think that's honest and authentic like that. So I think we can come in different areas.
Yeah. Or just to be genuine, just to be just present.
Yeah. Well, authenticity is really a lot where we want to come from. And then from Jane, exercise, true exercise, healthy food, sure. That can keep us balanced like that. Okay, so here, you recognize, thank you, Lori, feeling aversion to uncomfortable feelings. We have this resistance initially. This was me with some friends this week. I mean, we've all talked about this, but you know, people that get into, oh, I'm Buddhist, I'm not really angry, I shouldn't feel angry. And I'm like, no, I'm angry. I'm not gonna should on myself. So recognizing that feeling though, okay, and you know what, it's a little bit uncomfortable, okay, but I'm kind of allowing it the space, and I'm certainly not going to act harmfully because of it, but I'm just noticing so that I feel a little bit of this kinship with the people that are acting on it in a certain way, because I see where it comes from. I see my own mind. You know?
Yeah, I felt like, so feeling uncomfortable with certain feelings, undesirable feelings, and being able to befriend those, because I just noticed it in myself. And I know a friend who was lovely, lovely man who did end up committing suicide in his 60s because he was having difficulties, and he was ashamed and embarrassed of the fact that he was having these uncomfortable feelings. And he couldn't say it to any of his friends or people because he was embarrassed of having depression or any kind of feelings that we consider negative. And so it was interesting to me that when I was doing the meditation, I felt an aversion towards feelings of being down or anything like that.
Sure, I mean, it's very serious. A lot of people from suicide, I think, have a lot of negative direction towards themselves, obviously, that's not balanced. So it is uncomfortable, and I think we just keep working on that to, you know, allow the other things to get curious. Like if we're not curious to analyze what is going on in the anger, why did I feel angry right now? Why am I afraid right now? Why am I depressed like that? Then I'm never going to be able to get through it.
Yes.
So,
and to be loving towards it versus so much aversion.
Yeah, where I feel the word you used,
or shame.
The allowing lets me hang out with it a little bit. Like, okay, sometimes I'm like this. But again, if I recognize one of those three components I mentioned, mindfulness, shared humanity, and loving kindness, when I recognize the shared humanity, many, many people have these feelings. Like with suicide, you feel like you're the only one often. Nobody understands you. Nobody's ever felt this way. Nobody, you know, a number of people I know that have suffered from depression like that. So it's many people have these feelings.
Yeah, and if it's embarrassing to feel that way, that you can't even allow it, it's not allowable. It's not acceptable.
That's right.
Unacceptable.
And the thing is, it's very acceptable because we're human beings, and that means we're going to experience these feelings. Absolutely, absolutely. So thank you for and I'm happy to welcome our pets. Bella is with us. I think I just saw her in one of and we have Lisa's cat is there. Yes. We're getting some animal imprints. Hopefully they'll get out of the animal realm soon, perhaps. Thank you. Wait, is this Lisa and Walker Colston, is it? This is Walker, it says. From Lisa?
Yes, it's us.
You're kidding. Oh my gosh, it's been ages.
Yeah, we've been
Where are
attending
you?
the
Can I
last
see?
3 weeks. We miss you.
Oh my goodness. I can't, it's been years. It's unbelievable. I remember I think you guys donated a card of Vajrapani that we used for our Geshe.
Yes.
Is that right? And where do you live now?
We're living,
Can you see
we're
us?
living down in, let me start the video here. We're living in Southern California, down in Agoro. We've been living down here for 17 years. But yeah,
Well,
you
some
can
really
make very good
good
use of that car that was already like 10 years old. And you drove it another 15 years. Anyway, nice to see
It
you.
was a Toyota. It was the Mahayana,
Yes,
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
yes,
So welcome, thank you. Lovely to have you along. Wonderful to
sure.
see you guys.
Thanks.
Sometimes you get attached to results, yep, which gets in the way of being present. Not to, absolutely, and that's part of where self-esteem gets attached to results. You know, where self-compassion is, I'm not interested in, it's not a competition. It's not that I need to be the best person and say the right thing and be the one who sorts it. I'm just holding all of these, sometimes extremely uncomfortable experiences. I'm able to hold them with loving kindness, with mindfulness, with understanding our shared humanity like that. So I think that's a really good point. And one I'll just take last, and then I'm going to go on. Yeah, and if it's possible to make it for everyone so everyone can read the chats, that's great. Sometimes we have more compassion and fairness helping others, which we've noticed in the exercise. And then having a vividly appearing I that gets defensive when you try to help yourself with loving kindness. So what we're going to talk about next week, part of it will be about emptiness, selflessness, and how that's a great tool to use because the I gets very involved and feels extremely solidly existing. And that really gets in the way of the loving kindness. So when we can kind of dismantle that concept, there's a lot of freedom. So let me go on a little bit here. And thank you so much for all of your comments. Okay, now you might want to make some notes here. This is in how do we come to allow, how do we come to accept ourselves? This is a short exercise, okay? Seeing yourself as you are. Kristen Neff exercise, I really like this. Please make some notes, jot down a few notes, okay? Because you have some traits that you really, really like about yourselves that you're feeling are your strengths. And I think a lot of you are in touch with those. It's totally okay to be in touch with those as well. You know, sometimes we have a thing of, oh, that's egomaniacal and it's arrogant. No, this is how we lead to balanced well-being, okay? So some of these traits are pretty good. You're friendlier, you're extremely friendly person, you're smarter than a lot of people, you're attractive, you're whatever, you're, you know, and these are some things that can help you feel good about yourself. And then you have some traits that are extremely average, right there with everybody else. And then you have some traits you might see as your weaknesses. You need improvement, or they are extremely below average, okay? So what I'd like you to do, can you jot down right now? Okay, just 5 in these areas. And I'm going to call them culturally valued traits, like what we kind of accept in our culture, in our thing, okay? Can you just jot down, could you jot down 5 things, 5 of these traits that you feel you have that are above average? Okay, are we pretty good? 5 traits? How about 5 traits that you feel now you're just average? Okay, we're going to go to the last 5, if you guys are okay. You can guess what these are. These are going to be 5 traits for which you feel you're below average. Do you need a little bit more time? Okay, a couple more minutes. Okay, everybody ready? Pretty much? Okay. Just reviewing the 15 traits, and probably some of you couldn't come up with 5 in each category. You had more in one category. Were any surprises? Any? I mean, I had one. Any humor? My humor is for me is just to share what. So one of my below average traits, I'm not very coordinated. Not a very coordinated person, and somehow that came out right away, and I just chuckled at myself of like, because I sometimes really, amuse myself of how uncoordinated I am at times. So somehow that was kind of, it can be funny too, the fact that it doesn't have to be a really heavy negative trait, but I really am very below average as far as coordination. And yet probably the reason I can laugh at it now is from my embracing all of it. It's just part of who I am. So I'm comfortable with that now. So let me just see that much easier to list weaknesses. Okay, that's interesting. Easier to list the weaknesses. Okay, so something great to look at, thank you, Seema, is we're often, again, more tuned into the negative traits, and that seems to be easier and safer for us to mention than getting into the positive ones. Again, let's go back to the origins. Think about, prehistoric times, we were geared to be vigilant about danger and about anything that was going to jeopardize our lives, living in the wild with wild animals and searching for food and eating the way animals eat now. Do you ever see the way wild animals eat, where they're always looking around because something can eat them? So basically in the self-protective phase is why sometimes negative tendencies are there, because we're trying to improve ourselves to survive. It's a survival mechanism. Okay, but now we've evolved beyond that. So now we can start to celebrate the above average traits that we have and the glory that we are and the goodness that we are. So looking at these 15 experiences, these traits, consider the full range of the traits that you've listed and venture into, can you accept all of these facets of yourself? Okay, because our shared humanity, again, that is one of the three main components as we practice and try to practice self-compassion better. Shared humanity means that being human doesn't mean that you're better than others. Okay, being human means you encompass the full range of human experience, the positive, the negative, the neutral. Being human means you are average in many ways. So that's okay. And here's the other thing is, can you celebrate the experience of being alive on this planet in all your complexity and wonder? Again, can you celebrate the experience of being alive on this planet in all of your complexity and wonder? It's a much lighter experience of gentleness with myself, that sometimes I'm really uncoordinated. You know, that's, you know, I find it amusing now. And I marvel at people that are really coordinated. You know, I have this real intrigue of like, wow, isn't that great? You know, I could improve possibly some of these skills. That's certainly a possibility. I leave that door open, right? It's not a major focus in my life now because I'm not, let's say, an athlete. I'm not a gymnast. I'm not somebody that needs that kind of focus, but I certainly, it's a possibility. You know, and even if it's a heavier negative trait like that, I can still embrace, it's all of it makes up all of me on the planet. You know, in some ways I'd say it's all good if I'm participating in it like that. Thank you, Elizabeth. A balanced appreciation of personal qualities can be a cultural taboo. Perhaps one could strike a balance, accepting a compliment and passing. We're going to talk about that, of how are you with compliments and right. And how are you in general? I would say, to bring this in for a moment, when somebody compliments you, because this kind of is a back end of the traits. When someone compliments you, I'm just curious, and feel free if you want to unmute for a moment. How do you deal with a genuine compliment? What's your experience? Anybody?
Well, if it's for me, I return the compliment immediately. So it's a way of playing tennis and not keeping it on me, you know. I mean,
Okay.
the Chinese have a word for saying if a compliment comes, you say "na li," which means it's nowhere. You know, there's nothing to be said about it. So you sort of deflect immediately because it might incur the jealousy of the gods if you take on, you know, the luminosity of a compliment.
Okay. Because I think, thank you, Elizabeth. I think the other thing is, what's interesting is, and what if we just accepted it right there in a balanced way?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so for some people, they want to compliment back. That's certainly a cultural thing. I think in some of our cultures, though, what are your other experiences? I'm just curious. Are you all comfortable when you get genuine compliments? Yeah, Ginger? Do you want to unmute?
There, I did it. Okay, I'm not technical. That's a problem. It depends on the compliment. Sometimes it's easy and I just feel like, oh, thank you. You know, that feels really good. And then sometimes I think, no, they don't know the real dark me. It surely couldn't, you know, if they really knew me, I don't deserve that compliment, you know. So it depends, you know, it depends on the
Yeah.
compliment and the
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
And Ginger, something to add? Thanks, Judy.
Oh, okay.
Hi, Amy, Vicky Mann. I
Okay.
found that as
Wait,
I,
there.
Hold
oh,
on.
sorry.
Can you,
Oh, so sorry. I can't see anybody else. Something happened with my screen, so I'm sorry.
Okay, I lost Ginger there for a moment. Maybe she'll come back on.
can you hear me? Oh yeah, I lost that. Oh gosh.
Is that you? You want to add something?
I don't know what's happening.
Okay, well, feel free if you want to type it in, that's fine. Okay, so dismissing the compliment right away. Some people aren't comfortable. So this is another exercise in self-compassion. If they genuinely think about it, and I learned this as well because I wasn't comfortable with compliments. I thought it would lead into like pompousness for me, I'm better. And it does make the ego flutter a bit. Like you see, oh, so, but what if you just accept thank you? You know, if I acknowledge thank you, but then I don't have to ruminate over, you know, again, the balanced way is thank you so much. And I'm still going on with what I'm doing. You know, it's certainly nice to hear some nice things, but I don't need to over elaborate on that the same way I don't need to over elaborate when I hear a negative comment about myself. But boy, do we ruminate on that. Boy, do we ruminate on that. And then sometimes you wonder what they want from you. Okay, so again, these are some things we learn, right? These are just patterns that we learn. We've learned some of it from cultural situations from our parents. You know, I notice the influences from my parents of things of I respond the way they might have, and I had to learn like, that's not really my feeling. That was just an influence of this person. You know, so let me actually assess the whole situation. I feel safe. I think this person is genuine. Thank you. You know, and that's all. And then you can certainly, if you want to keep a heightened level of, I'll look if there's something that they might want from me, but maybe there is a service I can help and provide for them. Like turn it around so that it doesn't necessarily make them bad like that. And then one thing that was a comment a little bit further back, Cynthia, how to balance honesty and not hurting someone's feelings. And I can't remember if it was this class or another class, talking about tact and authenticity. Tact and authenticity. Okay, so there is tact where you don't want to hurt someone's feelings, but also there's authenticity where you're just being real. And I'll give an example where if somebody is saying like how much they really think this person's outfit is really great, or this artwork is fantastic, or they really like the play that you just went to, and something like that, and you really thought it was awful. You know, you have a totally different experience. So I might say to them, you know, that's so interesting that you feel that way. I feel so differently about it. You know, where you're being genuine and you're not trying to ruin their day, but I'm not lying and just going, oh yeah, yeah, it's great. So I try to find, again, some kind of middle ground to somewhat explain, you know, and there's sometimes maybe I don't need to say anything. I can just hear their view of it and say, oh, that's interesting. I'm so glad you liked it. I'm so glad you're having a positive experience without me having to add, because I'm having a really negative one. You know, I think that's okay. So, and sometimes it's tricky with that. If somebody is like, you know, do you think I look good in this? Or do you like my partner? Or, you know, you get into some things that can be a little bit trickier. And I just think, you know, use some basic tact of that, you know, how would I want them to respond to me? But also, I just don't get into asking people those kind of questions to put them in that position where it's going to feel awkward. But sometimes we're in those positions, right? Okay, so let me go on. Let me go on a little bit more with the next, but it's interesting. So what I would say is I'm introducing some of these exercises to come from different angles for you, so that you start noticing you're a multifaceted being that is fascinating. And like for me, I'll put it this way, my anger this week, I find my anger fascinating. I'm not laying a trip on myself that I'm a horrible person because I'm angry. And Buddhist nuns shouldn't be angry, and Buddhists shouldn't be angry. And how dare me have anger in my mind? I'm not doing that to myself, right? It's heavy enough living on the planet this past week, right? In Philadelphia, of all places, right? So, but I'm kind of fascinated. I'm kind of like, wow, the anger's so much stronger this week than before. Like, that's so interesting, you know? That's all. And I'm just there. I'm just like, yep. And you know what? It won't always be this strong because my mind's always changing. So this is fascinating to really get a look at it right now, because it really helps me have a little bit more connection to these people on the planet that are really angry. Like anger to kill people. You know, I've never been able to really get my mind around that. But from having this little bit of anger come up, I can, you know, I mean, I'll tell you something on an amusing level. I maybe shouldn't do this in a recording, but I will. So Larry will appreciate this because he's from Philadelphia. Some of you are aware, years ago, we had a mayor named Frank Rizzo in Philadelphia, years ago. He was a very controversial figure who had been the police commissioner. When he was police commissioner, the Philadelphia Police Department was extremely racist. And there were a lot of issues with people of color getting beat up and horrible things happening. He himself was quite racist. So years ago, and there was a contingent of the city, my grandmother included, who adored Frank Rizzo. Many, many people adored him. He was a kind of Philadelphia personality, and he was a real character. So after he died and whatever, and he was mayor, and they made a statue, and they had it at City Hall, and then some years ago it became controversial, and they decided to move the statue because a lot of people saw it as a racist statue. So they moved it to a building called the Municipal Services Building, the MSB, around the corner, and had it on the side there. And so obviously the protests on Saturday got violent, and there were people surrounding the statue trying to destroy it and set it on fire. And all they were able to do was deface it and spray paint it and like that. And so I was watching the news and seeing this, and I kind of jokingly said to my brother, well, you know, I wouldn't mind having that statue removed. I wasn't going to destroy it, but I could understand, certainly during this particular incident, what was happening, and to see that, you know, so that's also in my mind, that wish to kind of destroy something, not that I would act on it, but if it's in my mind, then again, in Buddhism, everything comes from the mind. So I'm going to have some mirror out there of an unsettled reality external from me, as long as I continue to have the delusions in my mind. And I'm going to add, and I'm not laying a trip on myself because of that. I'm just working with it and trying to participate with my karma, in my karma, to kind of work to purify the negative tendencies I have and to enhance what I wrote down on that list as my above average traits, or perhaps my average traits, to try to enhance those. And that's our process. That's part of what we can do, like that. So that's why I'm just giving you some exercises to kind of look at, you know, accepting, look at this embracing of yourself, like that. Let me go on to this one thing I was going to add here. The best way to counteract self-criticism, okay, is to understand it, okay, to have compassion for it, okay, and replace it with a kinder response. So there I am, you know, my friend comes to me suffering, and I have a lot of kind words and listening and a soft tone, and then I'm having a problem and I'm really, really self-critical and hard, okay? So again, let me understand that. Where does that come from? Well, I have some of these negative tendencies and these things, okay, but I have some other qualities as well, okay? So why not have compassion for the negative traits I have? Because I have compassion for when I see those traits in some of my friends, quite spacious about that, okay? And then I'm gonna learn to replace it with a kinder response, okay? So I wanna just start to walk into the door, and then I'll take any last questions before we part, but I wanna talk about compassion, more self-compassionate mantras. Self-compassionate mantras. And let me just give you some examples, because I'd like you to do a little work this week, if you can, is to come up with some self-compassionate mantras that will trigger more self-compassionate responses for you. Let me just find my, okay, it must be here. I'll give you one example is, and what I'd love you to come up with are some, now it could be simple things, simple self-compassion phrases is where we're rolling in mindfulness, we're rolling in, folding in shared humanity, we're folding in loving kindness, okay? And you can, here's mindfulness that shows up. You're uncomfortable. Whatever uncomfortable scene is arising, okay? In your mind, here's your saying. It could be, this is a moment of suffering. This is a moment of suffering. I'm just observing. This is a moment of suffering. Okay? And this is even the first teaching the Buddha gave, there is suffering. So I'm just observing that from my own experience right now. I'm suffering right now. Okay? And then I'll have possibly other people suffer like this. This is my shared humanity moment, the component, adding that. Many other people experience this suffering and suffer in this way. Maybe that's something you say to yourself. You might even have, as shared humanity, suffering's a part of life. Suffering's a part of life. Okay, and let's fold in a loving kindness mantra. Loving kindness mantra. May I be kind to myself right now. Or may I be kind to myself in this moment. And you might even add, may I give myself the compassion I need right now. But there's other mantras, and there's simpler mantras, simpler things you can devise for yourself, okay? So I'd love you to come up, and I'll give you an example, is 1 year at Vajrapani when I was director, I just needed to control everything. I thought that's how we would all be happy. And I realized I couldn't control anything. I couldn't even control my mind at the time. Some of you might remember, Larry. But, and so I practiced this. All I could come up with sometimes was, I had this thing in the back of my mind, let go, let go, let go, let go. I sometimes would visualize, use visualization if it's helpful. I would visualize myself like gripping and literally peeling each finger up. Let go, let go, let go, so that I could float. You know, once I peeled them all up, I could just float into the clouds, light as a feather, happier, unstressed, unburdened, let go, let go, let go. You know, what speaks to you? Notice what arises, what just comes up automatically. Okay, it can also be funny. Humor can be very helpful. One example I give of humor is, and many of you heard me talk about this before, is you can catch some of your bigger afflictive emotions when they're in smaller stages, when you're using your mindfulness, when you've developed some mindfulness, let's say. So for me, if I don't want to get to full-blown anger, if I'm with a group of people or we're working on something, but something is not working and stuck, and I might notice irritation, frustration, and annoyance arising. But they're kind of little small pieces of anger. They're not full-blown, I'm not going to explode, but I start to notice the irritation. And you might also notice that in reference to a particular person who's approaching you, right? So here comes the person, and suddenly I'll notice irritation in my mind, okay? I'm not an irritated person, I'm not really an angry person, but sometimes there's irritation in my mind, okay? So right there, I'm detaching a bit from the afflictive emotion. I'm not the afflictive emotion, it just happens to be in my mind right now. I have some irritation in my mind. That's all right, a lot of people do have it. So what I'll do is if I notice that arising, the annoyance or the irritation, I have a little voice in the back that will say to me, Amy, do not open your mouth right now. Because I know that something snippy could come out in relation to that person. Okay, so use it gently. Add humor if that works for you. Okay, can you try and you come up? I'd be interested to hear 3 interesting mantras from you that you happen to use this week that somehow counteracted the tendency to get negative with yourself, to overly criticize yourself. Okay. Any last questions, comments? And feel free if you want to unmute your mic, if that's helpful. And so continue. Yes, sorry.
Oh, sorry. I'm thinking of the Lama Yeshe quote, good enough, dear.
Yes.
That would be a good mantra to use.
Absolutely. And also, and wonderful. And Lama would also use, be gentle with yourself, because then you'll be gentle with all others.
That's my very favorite quote.
I used to have it on the wall next to me when I was the director of Vajrapani. That was like right there, because it's a really powerful one. Thank you. I'm doing the best I can. Absolutely. That's a wonderful one. Thank you. So all of these things, they fold them all in. We can all write them down. We can all use each other's. It's not, this is not, you know, your own, no, I thought that up. And I mean, this is really about being there with ourselves, with our shared humanity, loving kindness, which we're going to spend some time on. I mean, we need, you know, we could have a few more sessions, but I think we'll close it next week and then we can always go on. There's so much more I could say that we can go through. So at least we'll have some taste, I think is helpful. And then if we want to continue or do something else, we can continue some other exercises like that. So I think it's really helpful thinking about, gee, I'm being gentle with myself. That's where it starts. That's where this path really starts. And a lot of us have been grinding ourselves for a long time. And our environment has taught us that. Our parents have taught us that. Teachers have taught us that. Other friends. We come from a somewhat fractured place like that. So, I mean, just look at, you know, the eruption of our country right now. Okay. So we can take back our peace of mind, and we can all do that here and find more compassionate responses for ourselves and for others. Absolutely. That's what we're doing. So let's save our other mantras. Thank you, Natalia, for next time. That would be great. And I'd like to dedicate the merit in closing. And I'd like to thank all of you for your wonderful energy, for joining us this evening. We have one more session next week. And if you're interested, we're going to be doing some of the practices tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. So feel free if you want to join us, 10 a.m. East Coast time. And let's dedicate, I'd like to bring in Lama Zopa's COVID dedications. So I'm going to share my screen in a second. Let's see where I put the, here they are. Okay, here we go. It's a shame because now, you know, and I have a new folder, COVID practices, on my computer, which is unfortunate, but it's okay. You know, we're doing the best we can. I'd like to invest whatever positive energy we've created from our time, the merit, to all the people suffering again from the COVID virus. May they be healed instantly, and may the virus eventually be eradicated on the planet, and all other illnesses. And for those who passed away as a direct result of the virus or an indirect result, because we lost a friend this week, my family, a very close friend of my brother's who died, and it was kind of indirect. He probably would have gone in for treatment earlier and wasn't able to because he was afraid he'd get the virus. So he just passed away the other day. And so all these people that have recently died, my neighbor's aunt, Jean Maddox, Jean Lennox, sorry. And may they immediately take a good rebirth to benefit all living beings, to get enlightened, to benefit all. And also for all the people that have been severely abused on our planet due to the color of their skin or not, may we end racism, systemic racism, institutional racism, and slavery in any country. as quickly as we can and be able to find peaceful solutions in this country and as quickly as we can, and maybe find more enlightened leadership in the country would be really brilliant as well, if that's possible. And can we invest in our own practices? Because that will also change our external reality. If we can change our minds to make them more peaceful, more self-compassionate, in our hopes of reaching a place where we're unlimited to benefit all living beings. So let's, if you'd like, we can join in with this dedication. Let me find that practice. Whoops. Here we go. May the precious supreme bodhicitta, not yet born, but increase more and more.
Increase more and more.
However many
sick sentient beings there are, may quickly be freed from all sickness.
May all sicknesses without exception,
May all the sicknesses without exception transfer.
in all my lives,
never separated from
In
perfect
all my lives, never separated from perfect gurus. May I enjoy the magnificent Dharma by completing qualities, grounds, and path. May I quickly attain the state of
by the
Vajradhara.
force of the glorious one, Tsongkhapa, acting as a direct Mahayana virtue in all our lives.
May we
May
never
we
turn
never turn away
second
for even a second
for
from
a path highly
admired by the
victorious
victorious
ones.
ones.
Like the earth,
Like the earth, water, fire,
and
and wind,
medicines and monastery firewood, may I always
may I
be
always
enjoyed by
enjoy
all
by all
sentient
sentient
beings
beings
as they
as
light
they
me
light me
without
without
resistance.
resistance.
May I cherish all
Cherish all sentient beings like my own. May I cherish
much more than myself. All
all
the
their
negative
negative
karma
karma
running
How
running
they
through
life.
me,
May I
and
cherish
my
them more
virtue
and more than
virtue
myself.
on them.
May all the negative
as
karma
long
As
be
long
gone.
as any
May
sentient
my
being
virtue
has
ripen
not
in them.
been
As long as
liberated
any
from
sentient being
samsara,
has not been
may I
liberated
abide
from
in
samsara.
samsara to help
May I
them,
abide in
even though I could
samsara to
achieve
help them,
complete
even though I
enlightenment.
abide in samsara to help them, even though I could achieve
Due to
highest
all the
enlightenment.
past, present,
Due to all the past, present, and future.
Great. So we're going to seal with the merits with emptiness, page 3. This is the most important dedication Rinpoche often says, is to remember emptiness. Due to all the past, present, and future merits collected by me, the numberless Buddhas, and the numberless sentient beings, which are completely empty of existing from their own side.
may
I, whom completely empty of existing from my own side,
achieve the state of full enlightenment, which is completely empty from existing from its own side, and lead
that
all
state
sentient beings who are
who
completely
are completely empty of existing from their own
side to that state which is completely empty of existing from its own side. By myself alone, I'm completely empty of existing from my own side.
I fully
Fully
dedicate
dedicate all these virtues to be able to train just like the hero Manjushri, who knows reality,
and just like
and just like Samantha Bhadra as well. I
fully
fully dedicate all my roots
virtue
of
with the
virtue
dedication phrase
dedication
is the
praise
best
as the best by
by
all
all
the
the beyond
victorious ones of the three times,
times
in order to have good conduct.
The
wish granting, wish fulfilling jewel,
source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, to the incomparably kind Tenzin Gyatso I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled.
You who uphold the doers,
you uphold the subduer's moral way, who serve as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplish magnificent prayers honoring the three sublime ones, Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. Thank you so much for joining. I'd like to thank Heidi and Kai and Vajrapani Institute for all the support. And please think about supporting, again, these precious Dharma centers, Land of Medicine Buddha, Vajrapani Institute. Greatly appreciate. And look forward to seeing you next week, if not before. And I wish you all the best this week to generate we have some exercises. So again, it'd be brilliant to try to go back and do that. If you felt you were challenged by it, the exercise of treating yourself like your dear friend. Can we do that? Can we think up some compassion mantras? Can we be honest about our traits and practice embracing all of them by understanding our shared humanity? So a few things like that. So if you'd like to unmute, we can say goodbye.
Oh.
Bye.
Thank you, Amy.
Goodbye, good night.
Thanks.
Rest well.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Venerable Amy.
Venerable Amy, His Holiness.
His Holiness will be teaching again soon. I think it's June.